Hello and welcome back to Let's Code Pathfinder. Last time were able to get NPCs built out of their basic abilities and statistics. Today what we're going to do is we're going to look at how we can add the skills to our NPC generator. So let me show you how the end result looks. Let's suppose, for example, I wanted to build a ranger. And let's go with an atypical ranger. Let's make a halfling ranger. Let's give the halfling some extra dex. And let's suppose we make this halfling ranger a ranger level 6. So I've added the classes since last time, just to try to test out the new additions that I've made. So we come along here, our halfling ranger is not terribly strong, but does have a pretty high dexterity. So this is all stuff we saw last time, the HP, AC, the saves, attack bonuses, CMD. But what I've added today are the skill bonuses that this NPC would get, or actually I should say the skill modifiers, because they can go negative. So for example, climb and craft are class skills, so they get a little bit higher, they get a little bit of a bonus to them. Handle animal is another class skill, so it gets a bonus. I'm trying to see whether there are any that are negative. What you'll notice, I'm only including the skills that the NPC is allowed to make. So for example, knowledge checks are by trained only. So if you don't take any ranks in them, you're technically not supposed to use them. Sometimes GMs will, including myself, will fudge the rule on that, just because it makes more sense in terms of the story. But here we're only including the skills, the trained skills that they take ranks in. Oh yeah, so for example, since motive, this character gets a -1 in. Sense motive is wisdom. Yeah, I believe that's wisdom. And their wisdom score, is a -1. It's not a class skill for a ranger, so they take a -1 to it. If we keep scrolling down, we keep going down until the end. And so, for example, spellcraft is a trained skill, but they took a rank in it, so spellcraft is available to them. So this is pretty cool. Let's take a look at how we implemented this. So I had to define a new class, a new C# class called PF skill. So this is much like the PF class that we saw last time, where we're just defining all the properties of a class. Here we're defining PF skill as all the properties of a Pathfinder skill. So for example, you have to have what the name of the skill is so that it can print it out at the end. You need to tell it which ability it's associated with, and whether the skill permits untrained checks. So an untrained equals true means you can make untrained checks. An untrained equals false means you cannot make untrained checks. So there has to be a negative in there somewhere, so I put the negative on the untrained. So for example, if you're building perception, which is my example one up here, you would give it the name perception. You would... I'm not sure why I have ranks equal to 1 there. That ranks should be equal to 0. There we go. The modifier starts out at 0 and gets modified based on all the stuff you can do to it. And of course, perception is a skill is a check you can make untrained. So untrained is set to true there. What we have next is we need to actually create the skills themselves. So in this skills.cs, this is a script that's attached to an invisible object in Unity called skill list. So it's just like class list. It's just an object where we can store the list of skills, just that we've only got one copy of it to worry about. So here we go through, we create all the skills, we add them to this skill list object. And so basically we're just using our new C# class PF skill, and we're putting in all the information. So we're giving it an ID. The ID here is an enumerator. That's just so that we make sure we're matching up one thing with itself. I hesitate to use the string name to line up because I have been known to mistype it, as I did in a recent Black Hole Battles video. Then we tell it which ability it's associated with, so it's associated with dexterity, intelligence, charisma, strength, etc. And then we tell then we assign whether it can be made untrained. So most skills you can make checks untrained. Some of them you cannot. So for example, disable device, you're technically not supposed to make untrained. Handle animal, you're not supposed to make untrained because that could be dangerous. All of the knowledge checks, and I just realized I need a space there to be consistent. All the knowledge checks you're not supposed to be able to make untrained. Again, unless the GM rules otherwise. But since this is an NPC, chances are that's not going to come up. And we're going to generate scores for all of these skills, even if they seem like something, that an NPC might never need. So it might seem strange to give an NPC knowledge scores, but you never know what your players are going to do. You never know how your players are going to interact with an NPC or with a scenario, and suddenly you need the NPC's knowledge dungeoneering modifier, and you don't want to have to sit there and go back and check whether it was a class skill and whether they get any racial bonuses for it. You just want to have it available. So we're going to go ahead and calculate the modifiers for all of them. Plus the computer's doing it, so it makes it easier. One change we had to make to the PF class in order to keep track of class skills. So if you take ranks in a skill that's in your class skill list, you get a bonus. And so we now have an additional argument in our Pathfinder class declaration that's a list of class skills. So if I come over here to where we have the list of classes, this has now gotten significantly longer. Previously we just had this top part here, the class ID, the hit die, the CR adjustment, the base skill ranks, the attack bonus progression, and the save progressions. Now we have to add in a list of all of the class skills. And of course, some classes get a lot of skills. Take, for example, Ranger down here gets quite a few skills. I think it's the Rogue has one of the highest number of class skills, so we'll add that one later. But basically, we just add these in, and this is just a list for our code to check during NPC generation to check which skills to prioritize and which skills to award a class skill bonus to. So let's take a look at where we keep track of that, because if our NPC has a multi-class, which is very often the case, we don't want to award class skill bonuses twice, right? The class skill bonuses do not stack. And so if I go over to, let's see, where is it? In my notes, it's line 537. Here we go. So we now have a new list called My Skills. I should probably change that name to My Class Skills, but for now we'll just remember that is that's the list of this NPC's class skills. So what we do in this loop is we add class skills that have not yet been added. So this is in the subroutine add class of whatever classes have been selected. And so we're checking the list of this class's class skills. So that's the list we just saw declared over in classes. So that's this list here. And so we're checking that against the skills that have already been added. So for example, as we loop over, we're looking for that particular skill in the grand list of skills. So this skill list keeps track of all of the skills that are possible to take. And then we have a check for whether this skill we're currently looking at matches the skill that's in the class skill rank. And we're checking for whether that's yet been added to my skills list. So this little .contains function just checks whether this particular object has been added to this list, and then the exclamation mark means not. So this means if we're looking at the right skill and that skill is not yet listed in my class skills, then you get to add it to my class skills. Otherwise, you just continue to skip it. And this is just to avoid, like I said, double counting class skills. So once we have the list of class skills, the general rule is to add NPC's class skills. So the guide I read, I think it was on the PFSRD, said that the way you build an NPC skills is you only assign ranks to its class skill. So it's sort of maxing out the class skill bonus. And so that's where we've got this subroutine for take skills. So this is where we're just assigning the ranks for our skills. So here what we do is we go down and we add the skill ranks that we have. So the skill ranks here is the total number of skill ranks that we get to assign to our NPC. And here we're just increasing the ranks of every skill by 1. Now these are in the list my skills, so they're being assigned in whatever order they get placed into my skills. So this is going to randomly favor some skills more than others if this number of skill ranks is low. So say you're working with a fighter and they only get 2 plus their intelligence modifier per level. If they have more than, if they have 0 intelligence modifier and then they only get 2 skill ranks per level, that's not going to add up for the first few levels. That's not going to add up to their total number of class skills. So the first few are going to get ranks and the last few are not going to. But as you get higher in level, it will, no pun intended, it'll level out among the skills. And so what we do is we just add the ranks. So again, this is just keeping track of how many ranks have been taken in those skills. And then later we add those ranks to the skills modifier. I'm keeping track of ranks and modifiers separately, so that number one, we can keep track of which class bonuses to award, but also because later when we add feats, some feats have prerequisites of the number of ranks you've invested, not the total modifier in the skill. And so it's important to keep track of those separately. Just like you have on a character sheet, you have a column for the total modifier and you have a column for the ranks that you've taken. So this is where we're adding the ranks to the modifier and the class skill bonus to the modifier. And that's pretty much it as far as building the skill list. The next thing we do is we add on the ability modifier. So if the associated ability is strength, we add on STR. If the associated ability modifier is dexterity, we add on the dex modifier. I've included a line for adding con to any con related skills, and I know that con doesn't modify any skills. But, just in case they ever change it or there's ever a house rule or something that somebody wants to add, I've gone ahead and added that here just for completeness sake. I mean, it's never going to get accessed, but it's better to have this little snippet of code and never use it than to suddenly discover you need it and have to remember where you added it in. And then when we go to print everything, I've got in a block to print all of the skills and their modifiers. So it just prints name and the skill modifier. The one thing I don't yet have and that I'd like to add here on the video, if that's all right with you, are racial skill modifiers. So some of the races, actually I think all the core races get some sort of skill modifier based on their racial traits. So I'd like to work through that now and kind of show you how that'll work out. So for example, elves, half-elves, and gnomes get +2 to perception. So let's see, we're already looping through all of the skills here. So why don't we put this this snippet of code within this loop. So let's see, so we've got if race equals, let's see, who gets the bonus to perception? It's elves, half-elves, and gnomes. So I've got elf. Oh, actually, races needs to be races.elf. There we go. We need the enum, not the text. If race is equal to elf, or, there we go. Or race is equal to races.half-elf, or race is equal to races.gnome. Cool. So I need to check for the race, and then I need to check for whether my skill. And so and skill dot skill, and this is supposed to be the ID, is equal to skill ID dot perception. So again, we're looping over all of the PF skills in the list. So when it hits perception, and if we have a a perception bonus race, then we need to add a +2 to perception. Just checking my notes here. Yep, +2 to perception. So then we need to go to s.modifier plus equals 2. So that doesn't affect the ranks, it affects the modifier. So there's their racial ability modifier. So we'll close that up. And now I can just take this, copy and paste, and adjust it for other bonuses. So there's the perception bonus. Half-orcs get a +2 to intimidate. Half-orc. Which I always wonder about whether that should work against other orcs or other half-orcs. I don't know. That's something for other people to discuss on other channels, I think. So let's see. If race is equal to half-orc, and... oh, I need parentheses around that. Conditional there. There we go. You want to group your conditional. So this is checking whether this is true, and then have your and here. So and skill equals skill ID dot, let's see, this was intimidate, then s.modifier plus equals 2. Awesome. All right, let's copy this again. Paste. All right, what's the next one on my list? Halflings need to get a +2 to acrobatics and climb. So actually, let's copy and paste the half-orc one since it's shorter. So let's look for halfling. And so now we're looking at skill being equal to acrobatics or the skill being equal to climb. So I need an extra nest of logic here. Let's do a copy of this thing. We'll put an or climb here. Cool. So the way this grouping works, so you think of this thing as a group. So it's checking whether this is true, and then you think of this thing as a group, and it's checking whether this is true. And so checking for whether either of those is true, and then this larger group will return true. If either of these is true, it will return false only if both of them are false. And then there's their +2 modifier to acrobatics or climbing. And it's going to hit both of these because it's looping over all of the skills. Let's see, dwarves get a +2 to appraise. So we'll do a, oh, I missed a closed paren somewhere. Let's see, that is closed up. I need to close up the whole thing around the if. There we go. So let's see, dwarves need to get an additional 2 appraise. Copy, paste. So now we're looking at races.dwarf. And skill ID equals appraise. And the best part is, because I have this thing generic, I don't have to change this. It's just s modifier plus equals 2 every time. Just add 2 to it every time. Let's see. Finally, gnomes get a +2 to craft and profession. Now, I don't have craft and profession broken up, so we'll have to leave that to the GM because, you know, listing each individual possible craft and profession, I don't really feel like that would be a good use of the code here. Also because, I mean, I don't even know whether, is there even a comprehensive list of craft and profession? It seems like that might even depend on the campaign that you're running. Okay, so we've got our skill being either craft or profession. Cool. And there's our, let's see, there's our gnome. So that's our last specific one. The other thing I need to add is that humans get an additional 1 skill rank per level. So let's go back up here. Where is going to be the best place to do that? Where do skill ranks get determined? Let's see, skill ranks start at 0. Yep, they start at 0, and plus equals this class's base skill ranks plus the intelligence modifier. But if I go up to where I first have a human, can I add that up here? Let's see, I need to have it... Where do I have NPC? Let's see, I have reset NPC being called here. So if I change it up here under race, it's not going to make a difference. So let's actually do that within reset NPC. So we've got, where do I have skill ranks being first reset? Okay, oh, I've got that under reset mods. Oh, that's beautiful, because reset mods takes place before I get to the racial stuff. So why don't we put that under racial abilities, this part here. So under racial abilities, if I go to human, then I can... Okay, so here I've got the customized bonuses there, but that applies to anybody with human blood. So let's just do this part here. So if race equals races.human, then I can add in skill... Oh, but I would need to know the total level first. Okay, because it's 1 per level. Never mind. So I guess I need to put that under class, under add class. Because it's once per level, I need to know my total number of levels. So let's see, where do I add skill ranks? Here we go, skill ranks. And here we'll just add if race equals races.human. And this is exactly why I made things like the race and like the type and everything a global variable, so that I can access them no matter where I am, and I don't have to call them as function arguments here. So let's see here. So if race equals races.human, then our skill ranks plus equals, it's going to be 1 per level. So that's R here is the number of levels that you've taken there. Awesome. So now our humans are getting extra skill ranks in whatever they happen to have skills in. Cool. Or class skills in, excuse me. Awesome. So let's demonstrate this now. Let's see how well this works with a multi-class build, just to make sure everything is legal. So this one I'll ask for you to check me on, make sure that my build is legal, make sure that I'm not stacking anything inappropriately. Let's make this one a heroic NPC. Let's make this one a melee. Let's go with a human. Let's add additional intelligence, just to round things out. And let's make this one a Barbarian 4, Fighter 5. So a total level 9 NPC. When I click go here, it should take care of all of the bonuses fine. So like for example, this swim here. So swim gets a strength bonus. So the strength bonus is 2 plus a class skill of 3. So that's a total of 5 so far. So that means it had 4 ranks assigned to it. I think that sounds about right. It definitely didn't have 2 class bonuses added on, so that's good. But keep me honest if you want to go back and repeat the math on that. So if I take a look at this, Barbarian 4, Fighter 5, so maybe he was a soldier who became enraged at his commanding officers and has gone and lived in the wilderness for a few years. So we've got our ability modifiers like we had before, not terribly charismatic, unfortunately. We've got our HP. We've got not great AC for such a high-level character. One thing I don't have yet is adding equipment. His fortitude save is excellent. As you would expect, both the Barbarian and the Fighter have a fast fortitude save progression. Reflex and will are alright. Base attack bonus looking good. Melee and range looking good. So this should be a strength of 2 and a dex of 1, is that right? Strength bonus 2, dex bonus 1. Alright, good. I beefed up the intelligence a little bit just to see if we could get some extra skill ranks into this character. We do have a pretty decent acrobatics check. Oh my, that's an amazing CMD. I like that CMD. I want to play as this character. I got a pretty decent acrobatics check. Bluff is not looking good again, and diplomacy, again, those are charisma-based skills, so he's going to need to befriend a bard, probably. Fly is... I've never understood why... You know, I haven't played enough with characters who needed fly checks to know why everybody gets a fly score. Knowledge is looking pretty good. That's the advantage of taking those ranks and those class skills. Okay, cool. Alright, so that'll do it for today's video. The next step is going to be to add in feats. That's going to require creating another class here, another C# class, so call it PF Feats, because feats have, all the bonuses that they have to keep track of, but also all the prerequisites that they have to keep track of. So I've got to spend some time figuring out how to program those in. And so it's good that I've reached this point in this code development now, because I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break soon for summer. I'm going to post updates as I can, but I'll be tinkering with this off camera, and if and when I have an update to show you over the summer, I'll post a video about that. But otherwise, you can expect this series to return sometime in the fall, probably early September. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you